So, have you ever dated a man or are you currently in a relationship with someone where his pacing is rather slow? And I think the frustrating part about being with men like this is it creates a lot of uncertainty. Why do men pace themselves really slowly? What's really going on behind the curtain? Well, that's what I want to address today. Is he moving slowly? And should you be what you should be looking for in these four key areas? Four key areas. All right, so what causes a man to move slowly? I think right off the bat, for those of us in midlife, and midlife is after baby making years and before retirement, a significant percentage of men and women have experienced some level of adult traumas. That's right, adult traumas. Um, when someone's in their 20s and 30s, their life is just being launched. They got their they've got their the tail between their not tail between their legs. What's that phrase? I can't think of it right now. Where they feel like they can take on the world. That's what I mean. Okay, that charge, right? And you feel like you are invincible. Sadly, in many cases, people who believe they're invincible oftentimes find themselves in troubling situations. But I don't want to lean into that. What I want to lean into for those of us in midlife, one of the most challenging things that occurs is many of us have had multiple significant relationship that ended, or maybe even multiple relationships that didn't go anywhere. Repeat that, multiple relationships that didn't go anywhere. Did you know the number one emotional health issue facing most people is I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not likable? And dating and relationships can trigger this wound like nobody's business. So what happens, speaking of trauma, is adult trauma centered around the ending of a relationship. And so when a relationship ends and it wasn't done cleanly, it can often leave a rippling effect. And what happens is men in particular might be gun shy, emotionally committing to someone, physically committing to someone. Their communication can be off. And then worse, their lack of desire within commitment. That's right, their lack of desire within commitment. So if you found yourself in a relationship with someone who's was moving rather slow, I want to share with you my observations around this and also what you can do about this in the early stages, because quite frankly, my whole private coaching is helping women do a better job of screening, filtering, and what I call vetting for emotional maturity. So if you need some help with that, right, there's a link to a free discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. And there's a link below to schedule a call as well. Okay. So there's four key areas you must be conscious of when it comes to dating and relationships, in particularly when you're interacting with men in these four key areas. Now, one of the things, and we also have to address the three types of men who are actively dating. For those who know my content, know I talk about the users, the growers, and the users, the spenders, and the growers/builders. Okay. The users are those men that typically come on strong. They love bomb you. They're more hyper focused on the physical aspects of a relationship. And then they tend to fade away. So those men are always operating in a very fast paced type of energy. Now, the spenders, oftentimes, spenders are people that want companionship, they want connection, they want sex, but they're really lacking that desire, or maybe they're not capable of commitment. Now, these guys also can come on very strong, and then they do this gigantic pullback. They say things like, I need to take it slow. Well, you were like taking it fast to get into my pants, and now all of a sudden you want to take it slow. These are the men that I call the spenders. They want to spend time with you, and yet they're not capable of leaning in to a deeper relationship. Those are the spenders. Now, the growers and builders, those are the ones who clearly know they want to be in a committed relationship. They're more apt to pace themselves. They're not going to rush sex. They're not going to rush the relationship. They're going to pace to make sure that you're a good fit for them. And they're going to do a good job of filter and screening and vetting you. So men vet and screen a little bit different than women. That's why, because men tend to hold the cards when it comes to commitment. That's right. There's a saying, women are the gatekeepers of sex and men are the gatekeepers of commitment. It's true. Why is one of the number one search terms is, why are men commitment phobic? Another search term is, where is this relationship going? And it's all women trying to figure out men in this capacity. Men don't do searches on where's this relationship going. Well, the guys who have been put in the friend zone might be doing those searches. But for the most part, men aren't necessarily doing searches on how to make a committed relationship work, because they tend to hold the cards with the respects of commitment. So what I think it's hugely important to recognize, and I want to give a shout out to Sherry J for the $50 super sticker. I got to give you your props right now. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. That goes to the Connor Asley Scholarship Fund. That's my son who passed away right there. You know, I've got some sad news. My best man at my wedding, I've known him for 45 years. He just lost his youngest son yesterday to an accident. Just like he and his wife, 2 boys, our children were almost the same age, they play together. Childhood wounds and traumas and adult traumas don't have to necessarily be the ending of a relationship. One of the other significant traumas that can happen in people's lives is like what happened to my friend and I, who lost children, or we've lost a significant person in our lives, or we've lost our professional life in some way, shape, or form. So traumas play a huge role in why someone might take it slow. I know after Connor passed away, I wanted companionship, I wanted connection, I wanted sex. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't capable of commitment. I found myself living in that spender category I talked about for a very long time. And so it's incumbent upon ladies in particular to do your job of vetting, to do your job of screening, to do your job of filtering, and not filtering based on the surface things. A lot of times people surface on how tall they are, or what's their job. What's the most important thing to filter is this person of good character? Is this person kind? Is this generous a person? And yet we sadly, human beings, men filter based on looks, women tend to filter based on status. And then there's this expectation that the generosity, the kindness, the character, heart is supposed to follow, when it should be vetting for those things first. Okay, so coming back to the 4 key areas to focus on, I call these the red flags, because I said earlier, physical, okay? When a man, usually men don't approach the physical aspect of the relationship very slow. However, there are some men, especially those men who are in midlife, especially men past 55, 60, 65 years old, that might have some physical challenges in their lives. They might have some embarrassment with ED or not, or did I say or not? ED and such. That they take it slow from a physical perspective because they fear you might reject them. Also, men with small penises tend to take it slow from the physical aspect because there's a fear of rejection there. However, we know traditionally, if it's a red-blooded male, this is not an area where a man will take it slow. However, and like I said, the users will go very fast on the sexual. The spenders most oftentimes lead with the physical aspects because they're lacking in the other areas I'm sharing. And the growers and builders, look, when I met Marie, sweetheart right there, I was a horny guy. I wanted to jump her bones on the first night, you know, but we certainly paced ourselves to some, well, actually, we never paced ourselves. We just jumped right into a relationship. We bypassed the whole dating process and went straight to a relationship. But I think we had some things in our favor, and not everyone should adopt that practice. Okay, number 2, men who take it slow when it comes to communication. Men, now here's the thing, men have traditionally aren't necessarily good communicators to begin with, but you have to be really careful of the men, you know, men who might text very, listen, think about, I'm going to pause myself for a second. Communication. Do you realize that 80 to 90% of the effectiveness of communication is nonverbal? So these days we tend to use our devices tend to use our devices for communication. And I know people that have, they think they're building a relationship with one another because all they do is text one another, several times a day for hours on end. Okay. Text is the weakest form of communication. And then there are men who will avoid the telephone. They'll give excuses that they can't use the phone. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. If someone says I can't do phone calls, but they can do text message, again, that's a slow pace for them. There might be some reasons for it that should trigger a red flag warning for you. Now, this isn't in all cases. This is just some cases. But for the most part, men who rely on text communication, they avoid telephone calls, and more importantly, they go days on end without communication. That's certainly a red flag. And the other component within this red flag is number 3 is emotional connection with you. And what I mean is they are very reluctant to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be transparent with you, because they have a weak form of communication. And so they have a weak form of communication coupled with a weak capacity to be intimate with you beyond the physical. Folks, if you're not familiar with the book, Emotional Intimacy by Robert Masters, I highly recommend checking this out. Why do I recommend this book? Because the reality is we no longer live in an environment, the caveman days, the tribes, where physical protection providing protecting was the most important aspect of being in a relationship, and the women were the nurturers for the most part. Today, the whole purpose of being in a relationship is that connection on an emotional level. Now, for some, it's just physical level. That's all they want. But the real value of a relationship is to be with someone where you can just truly be yourself on an emotional level. And this is where a lot of men are emotionally inept. They're emotionally immature. They're emotionally constipated. That doesn't make them bad men. And certainly men can evolve from this space. Men can evolve from this space and grow. As I shared in a recent video about a TV show my sweetheart and I are watching called The Good Doctor, and this is about an autistic man who becomes a surgeon, and one of his biggest challenges is he has no filter. He blurts out what he's thinking. He has no real emotional IQ, especially being a doctor. He just vomits whatever he's thinking, and more importantly, he doesn't know how to share his feelings, and he has difficulty being physical with people. So over the evolution of the show, you see how people are nurturing and loving on him, and this is where he grows. Now, this becomes a real challenge for many of you because you see a man that you think has potential. They did one good thing. They drove you to the airport. They fixed your TV. They cleaned up your yard. They did one thing, and you hold on to this one thing, and you're lacking in so many areas of your life, but you saw that one glimmer of hope, and then you hang on to that. That's much like in the dating realm when you see the one photograph out of 20 where you're like, oh my God, he's gorgeous in that photograph, and the rest of them you're like, is this guy even a real person? You hang hope on that one. And women oftentimes, I think they have this capacity, you ladies have this capacity to go above and beyond seeing the potential. Listen, if a man isn't capable of leaning into his emotions, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be transparent, at least a baseline level, you're going to be constantly lacking because your capacity is here and his is there. And you know what that space in between is called? It's called drama. And what I mean to say is you're going to be frustrated within this relationship. Now, I know plenty of men who, through the women they were in relationship, they actually opened up their heart to these women. They were able to lean into their emotional side because it took a woman to open up their heart. And if you're not familiar with the book, How to Make Love All the Time by Barbara DeAngelis, I highly recommend checking this out. By the way, there's a copy of the links below that are the books I recommend below. This is a great blueprint to create deeper intimacy in your relationship. I highly recommend checking out Barbara's book. All right. The fourth, excuse me, I said 4 red flags. The fourth area to consider is commitment. Is he slow in discussing commitment? You know what's fascinating to me? These days, men can have sex with women with little or no commitment. That's right, these days. And I say this is fascinating because I remember when I met my now ex-wife, you had to be boyfriend and girlfriend before you got laid. I mean, there was certainly the hookups and the one-night stands, but today dating is more of a hookup culture. In fact, I've oftentimes said dating today is just a strung out version of friends with benefits. Commitment is essential if you listen. I've got to be your big brother here. Look, I can't be there on a first date for you and have my shotgun out pointed at the guy's head saying, what are your intentions with my little sister? You have to do that for yourself. You literally have to establish what is your intentions for wanting to get to know me. Now, folks, it takes, I was listening to Jay Shetty. He just came out with the book about love, and he says it takes about 40 hours of face-to-face time to get to know someone. So maybe holding off, and I always say it takes about 100 hours of face-to-face time to build that first layer of trust, and he says it takes about 200 hours to build a good friendship with someone. To build a good friendship, folks, what's going to make a relationship into commitment is if you built a solid friendship while you're having sex together. So yes, sex is the part of the equation, and I wouldn't jump into bed with someone until I've at least spent those 40 hours and have had real discussions about trust and commitment. And if you're not familiar with the book, 8 Dates by John and Julie Gottman, Chapter 1, Trust and Commitment. Ladies, I say this frequently, before the penis goes inside the vagina, read that chapter, read it with them. Do you know I'm getting messages from women now saying, Jonathan, I'm having the guys watch your videos and we're discussing them. It's fascinating. Now, I just recently had a client share that with me. I had another follower of mine here on the YouTube universe share that with me. I find it just absolutely encouraging to hear that my content now becomes fodder for having deeper conversations. Folks, it's time to do a better job of vetting, because commitment, if a man is dragging his heels on some level of commitment, you've been together for 6 months, let's just take it slow, I don't like putting labels on it, I don't need a piece of paper, all that kind of stuff, then what's your chances of shifting this person later on? Folks, you all know my story if you've been following me with Marie and I. We literally, on our third date encounter, I'm not really sure what to call it, we did a 4-day deep dive, laying our cards on the table. We're radically honest with one another. And when we walked away from these 4 days in a row, we agreed to explore a fully committed relationship that led to moving in together, which we did within 5 months of meeting. Okay, so what causes men to go slow? Traumas, uncertainty. They don't know you very well. They're not really good at vetting you. They're uncertain about, they're more driven by sex. They've got traumas in their life. They've got maybe some real heavy baggage. It used to be called baggage. They lack that capacity to be emotional, and they're weak communicators, and they haven't established that they want to have a fully committed relationship in their life. And these are the 4 things you need to be looking for. Is he moving too slow? I hope not. But if you find yourself in that, then jump in, be radically honest, and then see where it takes you. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know. Post a comment below. Please hit that like button. Please share this video with friends. Please subscribe to my channel if you're brand new.